Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have Yvonne Matzk, which is the former Director of Partners and Marketing and the current founder of, I might make sure I pronounce it, is it Coachere or Coachere, or how do I pronounce it, Yvonne? You tell me.
Coachere.
Coachere. Very nice. Where did you get the name from, Coachere?
So I could come out with a load of rubbish and say research it and this, that, the other, but to some AI tool that generated a company name based on some predefined words. So it actually came from an AI marketing tool.
Very good, very good. Well, thanks, Yvonne, for coming into onto the Channel Chat show. The reason, obviously, I brought you on is because I think you're an avid promoter of women in tech, but also I want to get your views on what's going on in the industry, because it's well documented, 15.9% of women in tech, etc. And recently, the last 2 or 3 years, the Women's Festival has come out, which, quite frankly, none of the men knew why it was going to happen. They didn't know why it was happening. So, if I start with that first question, what's your honest views on the Women's Festival and why it's happening?
So, look, I think it's a good thing in the way that anything that promotes or encourages women to have a voice and bring themselves forward can only be a good thing, or highlights the fact that there are so few of us can only be a good thing. My only worry about some of these types of activities is that we run the risk of segregation to a point where women start to feel that they're not equal to men, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah,
if I think about my career, and every single award I've ever won as an individual or as a leader of a team, that's never been because I'm a woman. It's because of my performance. So, do we run the risk of people, women starting to think that they can only compete with other women? I'm not sure, but they absolutely can compete with men. By the way, that's a given.
Do you think they are? The Women's Festival, only women can be nominated. It's only a women's award. Do you think that is actually segregating them to actually say, do you know what? We're going to try and do a separate thing and only have women's awards because we can only compete with women, which is nuts. But is it going down that line?
No, I mean, I've seen in my category, there was some really prominent male candidates. In fact, because I had the executive mentor in my category, and there were some really strong male candidates for their role that they play in encouraging females in the industry. So I think we should stop on just the women and look at it more from a diversity piece as opposed to focusing just on females. I look at CRN awards, the main awards that everybody gets fired up about. The last 2 years, there's only been male candidates for the CRN Channel Chief Awards, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Because there are equally as good women capable of winning that award than the men. So that's my only concern and worry for the future, is that we're seeing that we can only compete with other women, which is absolutely not true. Emma D'Souza won that award last, the CRN Channel Achievement Award, not because she was a woman, because of her accomplishments in the channel.
Yeah, just on that Channel Chief Award, that is actually one of the awards that you've got to be nominated for, isn't it? Is that correct? So do you see it? Because I actually spoke to a couple of other women about this. Now, is it because men are a bit more self-promoting, i.e., I'll call up John. John, can you do me a favour? Can you sort of write a nice letter in to say how wonderful I am and I should be nominated for the Channel Chief? And then they do a bit of coercion, and then a few letters going, and they get nominated. Because I don't see women would do that. Probably they wouldn't be as forward as doing that. So do you think that's a lot to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's how we're conditioned. So I've just read a really good book, actually, and if there's I highly recommend it for any woman or man to read it. It's called Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and she talks about it in her book, about the fact that as youngsters we're all preconditioned. So we're all if you're confident and very successful, confident, happy woman, we're conditioned to mistrust and dislike you. But if you're a man, your studies have proven that the more powerful, successful and happy you are, the more trusting we are of you. So because of how we're conditioned, women do not want to put themselves forward for these things because they care more about what people think and like about them than they do about celebrating their achievements. Whereas guys they know that it's going to make them more successful and more, trusted. So it's all down to how we're, part of it is how we're conditioned from the early ages as youngsters.
Yeah, because even on those awards, that's something that's got to change, isn't it? We should be having female nominations into those channel chiefs, because if it's going to be all inclusion, all inclusive, it can't be just, I'm going to call up my mate at XYZ company and ask him to nominate me because that's how we get forward. That's got to stop, isn't it?
I agree. It has to stop. I think if they want to have some real importance to them or credibility, then yes, they should look at how they restructure the nomination process for both sets of awards. I mean, it's great that there was 800 nominations for the Women in Channel Awards this year.
Is that right?
Is phenomenal.
800
nominations, not shortlisted, but nominations. Yeah. So the good thing is more and more people are coming to the forefront. But is that just because they're feel more comfortable because it's a women event, or is it because the companies behind them are, they're driving that agenda because it makes them look good? I don't know, but I think you're right. The format should change, and it should be based on people's actual performance
absolutely,
rather than the popularity competition.
Absolutely. Now, as we touched on earlier, it's well documented about there's a shortage of women in the industry, but there's a real shortage of women in the reseller market. So if they do come into our industry, they're tending to go into vendors, and if they are, or software aligned companies. But if we're looking at maybe hardware distribution or hardware resellers, almost non-existent. So what's going on there in your opinion? Why is it there's so little women in those sort of hardware resellers?
Look, I think it's not an easy industry to navigate your way around. The culture of the reseller market is quite aggressive. It's very competitive. We don't have the luxury of having a brand associated to us that we can go and call upon. You're competing with lots of other resellers that all do the same thing. So by nature of the culture of the industry, it's a lot harder, I think, for women to, be successful. Not because they're not capable, just because the environment is a lot different to that of a large vendor or corporate that is dedicated to supporting women and making sure that there are things in place to, help with those types of situations.
Do you think there's enough being done in general to attract people into the technology industry? Because once we've got them in here, hopefully that they've come into the channel at some point, they're leaving as quickly as they join, which is even more worrying. If you look at and I'm generalizing a bit, but if you look at a lot of men, they come into the industry and they seem to stay a long time, and yet women come into the industry and they just go straight away. So what's your view on that? Because there's one thing trying to get them in here, but if we can't keep them, it's going to be just a revolving door.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. A lot of that is down, it's hard work. One, I think there wasn't enough in the past to be more flexible for women. So what happens is they come in, they do their career, they're highly successful, but then they decide they want a family. And then at that point, then you've got to think, well, am I going to put my family first, or am I going to put my career first? So depending on your organization, it depends on what choices you have. So I personally made a conscious decision not to have children until I'd reached a point in my career where I felt I was senior enough to leave it and come back into it at that point. But then once you've got the child, you have the guilt thing that gets put in as soon as you have a child. So you're dealing with all this guilt, and then certain things, I was traveling 12 weeks last year in my role at CDW abroad, which is nuts, right? So the good thing is, I think the great thing is about what's happened in the pandemic, that's going to slow everybody down. So there should create more opportunity for that. It's already been proven around the flexibility with most organizations now. So I think the industry has become more accommodating because of COVID. Let's hope it stays more accommodating for women to help them adapt and change, because it is difficult and for different reasons.
Do you think that, and without saying it was a good thing, COVID, because it sounds distasteful, but I actually think it's probably potentially a good thing to encourage more women to come into it, because there's no doubt about it. Currently, we're more flexible. You know, we have to be. We have to work from home or whatever we're going to be doing, and we're more flexible at the moment. But do you think that's a big part of it? Not being attractive to women before COVID, i.e., oh, it's not 8:30 to 6. It's hard work. You can't leave early to pick up your kids and all this. There was basically, they weren't really encouraging women who had childcare issues or anything like that. Unless you're a senior, but at a junior level, be like, oh, no, this is a problem, or we actually don't want these problems. Do you think that was really putting people off?
Well, yeah, I think people have natural unconscious biases around these things, right? I remember actually in my career being asked if I was going to have another child before I was, you know, and that's just an unnatural bias that people have. We all think it, not everybody says it, because it is painful when a woman goes and leaves a business to go and have a child to the business, unless you're geared up to it. If you take our, you know, CDW, who have got 50% females in the leadership, so C-suite, female CEO, which is amazing, which, you know, might be one of the reasons why they're so successful, just saying. You know, they're you know, but they have intently gone out to make it a environment which encourages working mothers. I remember meeting so Bernadette Whiteman, I don't know whether you know Bernadette, so she used to run the channel at Cisco all those and she was probably one of my early role models, if you like. And I remember her telling me a story that she only actually hired single working mums because of how driven and the work ethic that they had, you know, amongst them. So we know that they can do the job. We just we need to make the environment suitable for them to be able to do the job. Because
you made a point there about, you know, if we have two candidates come in, you've got a man, you've got a female, and maybe the female's at sort of, you know, it sounds childbirthing age or whatever. People are going to subconsciously think, oh, actually, what if she leaves in a year? What if she leaves in 2 years? I'm going to have a gap for a year. So subconsciously, they're almost putting them off, or they're putting themselves of hiring them, aren't they, straight away? Because they think the man's got to work, etc., etc. The woman, oh, she might only want to be here for 18 months before she has a baby, and she might not come back. So for the business, it's quite detrimental. So how can we get over that natural sort of bias where people are going to subconsciously think that anyway?
You know, women are going to still have children until they make it possible for men, right? So if you want a diverse organisation and all the benefits of having more women in your organisation, because we know all the statistics that prove a more diverse culture has proven success, then you need to start thinking about how you can make it more accommodating, or know that when individuals come into the business, you're not even thinking about that. Or if they do go off and have a child, so what? What are you then going to do to help them come back? What are you going to do to make them want to come back? Because a lot of the reasons people don't come back is because they're not, you know, feel like they can come back. So that's what we should be doing. We should be not using it as a disadvantage. We should be using it as an opportunity to look at our industry and think, what have we done to make it more able for those women to work in that environment?
And Yvonne, you've obviously risen to the top at CDW, and you mentioned there, you know, 50% of their workforce and their leadership team, you know, unbelievable, fantastic. You alluded to it, you touched on it, some of the benefits of having more females in your business, and the diversion of that. Give me a bit more information now. What do you see as the perceived benefits, apart from having lots of ladies around, etc.? But what is the benefit of having females? What's the perceived benefits?
I don't think it's just more females. I think it's more diversity. Full stop. Yeah. Okay, so different cultures, different demographics, different you know, ethnic minorities, etc. Because you know, the more diverse opinion you have, the better outcome you're going to have. If all your opinions and decisions are based on a small number of stereotypical white middle class men, you're going to keep getting the same results, right? But if you have a broader, more diverse opinion, or, you know, people coming in from different backgrounds, then they can get you to see their point of view. So you can start to adapt what you do to accommodate those types of individuals as well. So we start to lose that bias.
Yeah. Do you think, what attracted you to the industry yourself? Why did you come into it?
So I'm a little bit of a geek.
Are you?
I love my gadgets. Yeah, I know. So I used to line program when I was 11 on an old Sinclair Spectrum.
Oh my God, Yvonne, you are a geek, aren't you?
I know, I'm a little bit of a geek. I used to love it. I used to spend hours, but I think then I became less interested in how things worked, but I love technology for what it does. So I love my gadgets.
Really?
If it's out there and it's new, I've got it. I mean, I'm known for it. I'm a nightmare. The first time, there's new Apple phone, I'm queuing up at the door. But not because of how it works, because of what it enables me to do. The fact that I can run a business off of a phone is amazing. The fact I'm talking to you over video and I can help people in my new career anywhere in the world from anywhere, that's powerful stuff, right? That's what attracted me to the industry.
Okay, and you've obviously risen to the top at CDW, and now you've made the scary decision to go and work for yourself. Once you've done all the hard work, right? So people will be looking at you thinking, this girl's crazy. She's got to the top of one of the best partners in the industry, and you've jacked it in. You've gone and done something else. And why would you do that? That you're supposed to be a role model for women. You've got to the top, and now you said, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. So what inspired you to do that?
Look, I think for me, I've never been driven by money. I've always been motivated by doing the best I can and being challenged by achieving something. So I just got to the point in my career I felt where I'd done as much as I could at that organisation. And I knew I wanted some time out because of all my travels. So I'd made that decision. And it was then while I was on that journey of sort of reflection and stuff, I did a coaching course, and it was like this light bulb moment went off, and I was like, wow, I can help so many more women if I become a qualified coach by giving them the tools and the resources and combine that with the experience that I've got to help them in their careers, to deal with imposter syndrome, for them to become more confident, to uncage them so they deal with all of these preconceptions that have only been ingrained in them that aren't actually real. So that's why, because I thought I can actually help more people in the industry this way round than I could going back to work for just one other partner.
And do you think you'll ever go back into the industry? Obviously, you still are in the industry. Do you think you'll ever go back and attempt that? Because with your track record, there'll be people swarming around thinking, well, actually, let's get Yvonne Matzk back into the industry, into another sort of leadership role. Do you think you can ever be tempted back? Or never say never?
Look, never say never. Never say never. I think for now, though, I've got to give this a go. I want to, I love a challenge, and I would kick myself if I didn't give it a try. They always say regret something you have done, not something you haven't. So I think for now, for sure, I want to give all my energy and focus on the coaching and the consulting. But then, who knows, 5 years from now, when Alexia is in senior school and she doesn't need her mum around and she's not nagging me and stuff like that, then I might think differently. But for now, this is, I think, what I want to do.
And Yvonne, so the last question. So there'll be a lot of listeners out there, especially the female ones, the younger ones that maybe just on the start of their career, that would love to emulate what you've done. You've got to the top into a company. You've been very, very successful. What advice would you give them to get to the top and start getting those promotions and start reaching those higher echelons of directorships?
So look, know that you can do it, for one, because we're always being told we can't. As women, we're told we've got to be this way, we've got to be that way, but know that you can be whatever you want to be. And you have every right and every opportunity to be at the table than the next person. So don't be discouraged by the fact that there are few women. Be the game changer. Be the one that helps to drive the agenda. Be confident in your own ability, because the skills that are required today are very different to the ones of old, right? The customer is changing. Technology is changing. So there's never been a better opportunity for a woman to come into this industry and bring her different, differentiation to the market. Because, with things like AI and machine learning and how it's advancing, everything's moving to the cloud. So it's less about the physical technology and it's more about, the outcomes. Go for it. It's an amazing industry, and don't be put off. Be the game changer, and just find people that you can work alongside or mentor you that can give you the support and courage to make it on that journey.
Yvonne, brilliant, fantastic advice to listeners. Thanks so much for your time. It's the end of the show. Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.